The message came at 3:00 in the morning. Earth time. Captain Jake Morrison was sleeping in his quarters aboard the ESV Guardian when the emergency signal woke him up. The red light blinked on his communication panel, showing an encrypted transmission from the outer rim. Jake rubbed his eyes and sat up. Emergency messages from the edge of known space were never good news. He pressed the decode button and waited. The screen flickered, then showed the tired face of Commander Lisa Wang. Jake had known Lisa for 15 years since their academy days. She looked older now, with dark circles under her eyes and worry lines on her face. "Jake, I need your help," Lisa said on the recorded message. "Something terrible is happening out here. The coalition is throwing away entire species like garbage. Families, children, elderly people, they're all being forced to leave coalition space with nowhere to go." Jake leaned forward. The Galactic Coalition controlled most of the known galaxy. Earth had joined them 50 years ago, becoming their newest member. The coalition promised peace, trade, and protection, but Lisa's message painted a different picture. "I'm sending you the files," Lisa continued. 3 species so far have been exiled completely. The coalition calls them genetically inferior or culturally incompatible. That's just fancy words for getting rid of people they don't like. The first file opened, showing a species called the Zilani. They looked like dolphins but could walk on land using mechanical legs. Their skin was blue, green, and always wet. According to the report, the Zilani refused to send soldiers to help the coalition conquer new worlds. They believed in peace and would not fight wars for territory, so the coalition declared them cowards and ordered every Zilani to leave coalition space within 30 days. The second file showed the Karathi. These beings looked like walking crystals, their bodies made of living gemstones that sparkled in the light. They were incredible engineers and inventors, but their technology was so advanced that it made other coalition members look primitive. The coalition leaders felt threatened. They accused the Karathi of hoarding secrets and exiled them for technological superiority. The third species broke Jake's heart. The Vexi looked almost human, but with large, gentle eyes and pale skin. They could read emotions and feel what others felt. This gift made them wonderful healers and counselors, but it also meant they could sense the corruption and cruelty in coalition leadership. When Vex high diplomats started reporting the truth about coalition crimes, they were labeled psychic spies and banished. "These refugees are dying out here, Jake." Lisa's message continued. "Their ships are falling apart. They don't have enough food or medicine. The children are getting sick, and I can't help them all by myself. Every coalition world has orders to turn them away. No one will give them fuel, food, or supplies." Jake watched video files showing refugee ships. The vessels were crowded beyond capacity. Families huddled together in cargo holds. Children cried from hunger, while parents tried to comfort them. Proud Karathi crystals were growing dim, without proper minerals to sustain them. Young Vexhi were going mad from sensing so much fear and desperation around them. "I've been giving them what supplies I can," Lisa said, "but my ship can only carry so much, and there are thousands of them. If Earth Command finds out I'm helping refugees without permission, they'll court-martial me. But I can't just watch them die." Message ended with Lisa's coordinates. And a desperate plea, Jake, you have friends in high places, talk to Admiral Carter, talk to anyone who will listen. These people need sanctuary, and Earth is the only place that might help them. Jake stared at the dark screen for a long time. He thought about his daughter, Amy, sleeping safely in her bed back on Earth. He imagined her homeless and hungry, floating in space while the galaxy turned its back on her. Thought made him sick. Admiral Ben Carter was not happy about being woken up at 4 in the morning, but when Jake explained the situation, the old Admiral's anger turned to something else. Carter had fought in 3 wars and seen enough cruelty to last several lifetimes. He listened to Lisa's message and reviewed the refugee files without saying a word. How many ships? Carter asked finally. 47 so far, Jake replied. More arrive every day as word spreads. They're gathering at the edge of our space, hoping someone will help them. Carter stood up and walked to the window. His office looked out over Earth's orbital defense platforms. Massive ships patrolled the area, protecting humanity's home world. Earth had grown strong over the past 50 years, building fleets and colonies across human space, but they were still the newest members of the coalition, still walking carefully to avoid making enemies the coalition won't like. This, Carter said, if we help these refugees, we're going against direct orders from the galactic government. They could impose trade sanctions, cut off our colonies, or even declare us enemies. Jake nodded. Yes, sir, but look at these children. He showed Carter a video of a young Zelani barely old enough to walk. The little one's skin was turning gray from dehydration. His parents had given him their water ration, and now they were dying too. In another clip, a Karathi child's crystal body was cracking. Without the right minerals, young Karathi would shatter and die. Carter watched for several minutes. His jaw tightened as he saw families sleeping in hallways, elderly beings lying on bare metal floors, and parents trying to make games out of rationing food so their children wouldn't understand how desperate things were. Sir, I know the political risks, Jake continued, but these are good people. The Zelani are pacifists who just want to live in peace. The Karathi could teach us technology that would help everyone. The Vexi could help us understand ourselves better. The coalition is throwing away treasures because they're afraid of anything different. Carter turned away from the window. What do you need? Permission to bring them home, sir, all of them. Admiral was quiet for a long time. Jake could see him thinking through all the consequences. Earth's relationship with the coalition would be damaged, maybe destroyed. Human colonies might face retaliation. Trade agreements could be canceled. Earth might find itself alone against a hostile galaxy. But then Carter looked at the refugee files. Again, he saw a Vexi mother holding her sick baby, tears running down her face, as she tried to project calm emotions to keep the child from sensing her terror. He saw Karathi engineers using their last energy reserves to keep the refugee ships running, even as their own bodies grew dim. He saw Zelani elders sharing their final drops of water with the young ones. Contact Lisa, Carter ordered. Tell her to start moving the refugees toward Earth space immediately. I'll handle the politicians and the coalition. Jake felt relief wash over him. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Carter said grimly. This decision might doom us all, but sometimes you have to choose between safety and doing what's Right, Earth didn't become great by abandoning people who needed help. Within hours, the order went out. Earth defense fleet ships began moving toward the refugee gathering point. Supply vessels loaded with food, water, and medical equipment followed close behind. The news reached Earth's government and caused immediate panic. Emergency sessions were called. Politicians argued through the night about the risks and consequences. Some demanded the refugees be turned away before the coalition noticed. Others supported giving sanctuary to those in need, but the die was already cast. Admiral Carter had made his choice, and Jake Morrison was carrying it out. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, 47 refugee ships, full of the galaxy's unwanted, began their journey toward Earth. Behind them, more ships appeared every day as word spread through hidden channels. Earth was about to discover what happened when someone finally said yes to those the galaxy had rejected. Dr. Maria Santos stood in the largest conference room on Luna Station, staring at holographic displays showing Earth's solar system. Red dots marked incoming refugee ships. 47 had become 63 in just 2 days. More arrived every hour as word spread through secret channels across the galaxy. The scope of the crisis was growing beyond anything they had planned. "For we need more space," Maria said to her assistant, Dr. Kevin Taylor. The Zelani ships alone carry 8,000 refugees. They need water habitats, not just any living space. Kevin pulled up construction reports on his tablet. The emergency shelters in the Pacific are almost ready, but the Karathi need something completely different. Their bodies require specific mineral compositions to stay healthy. Maria rubbed her temples. As Earth's leading expert on alien biology, she had been given an impossible task: prepare homes for 3 completely different species. In less than 2 weeks, the Zelani breathed water and air equally well, but needed constant moisture. The Karathi were living crystals who absorbed nutrients from certain rocks and metals. The Vexai looked almost human, but were so sensitive to emotions that large crowds could drive them insane. "What about the Australian site?" Maria asked. "The mining consortium is fighting the government order to evacuate their facilities," Kevin replied. "They claim the Karathi will contaminate their equipment." Maria's frustration grew while refugee ships drifted in space with failing life support systems. Humans on Earth argued about property rights and profit margins. She was about to respond when her communication device chimed with an urgent message from Earth's capital. The political battle had begun in earnest. Senator Charles Webb stood at the podium in the Global Senate, his face red with anger. "We are risking human civilization for aliens who couldn't protect themselves," he declared to the packed chamber. "The coalition has been our ally for 50 years. These refugees were exiled for good reasons. Why should Earth become a dumping ground for the galaxy's unwanted?" Several senators nodded in agreement. Senator Webb continued his speech, his voice growing louder. "What happens when the coalition decides we're harboring criminals and terrorists? What happens when they cut off trade to our colonies? What happens when they declare Earth itself an enemy?" President Nancy Rodriguez watched from the gallery. She had been briefed on the refugee situation 3 hours earlier and was still processing the implications. Earth's membership in the coalition had brought prosperity and security, human colonies flourished under coalition protection. Breaking with the galactic government could destroy everything they had built. But then she remembered the files. Admiral Carter had shown her the images of dying children and desperate families, the reports of coalition forces destroying refugee supply ships. Just to send a message, the testimonies from Vex high empaths who had sensed the corruption and cruelty in coalition leadership. Senator Lisa Park stood up to respond. With respect to my colleague, we're not talking about criminals. These are families, scientists, artists, and peacekeepers. The Zilani were exiled because they refused to fight aggressive wars. The Karathi were banished because their technology was too advanced. The Vexi were cast out because they could sense lies and corruption. The debate raged for hours. Pro-coalition senators warned about economic disasters and military retaliation. Pro-refugee senators spoke about moral obligations and human values. Meanwhile, in space, people continued to die. The argument was interrupted by an emergency announcement. Coalition ambassador Tekmer had arrived on Earth unscathed and was demanding an immediate meeting with President Rodriguez. Ambassador Tekmer was an intimidating figure. His insectoid body stood over 7 feet tall, with 4 forearms and compound eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He had represented the coalition on Earth for 12 years, and everyone knew he had little patience for human concerns. President Rodriguez. Tekmer clicked. His translated voice, the coalition is aware that Earth vessels are approaching refugee ships in violation of exile order. This activity must cease immediately. President Rodriguez kept her voice steady. Ambassador, we're providing humanitarian aid to beings in distress. That's always been within Earth's rights under coalition law. These beings are exiled criminals. Tekmer replied, his mandibles clicking. With annoyance, they were removed from coalition space for the safety and security of member worlds. By harboring them, Earth is violating its membership agreements. What crimes did the children commit? President Rodriguez asked. Quietly, the ambassador paused. His compound eyes focused on her with unsettling intensity. The offspring of exiled beings carry the same genetic and cultural flaws as their parents. They cannot be permitted to contaminate coalition space. The words hit President Rodriguez like a physical blow. She realized this wasn't about crimes or security. This was about the coalition's belief that some species were simply inferior and didn't deserve to exist. What are Earth's consequences if we continue helping these refugees? She asked. Decimer's response was swift and brutal. Complete trade embargo within 60 days. Withdrawal of coalition protection from all human colonies. Classification of Earth as a hostile, non-aligned world. Your species will be alone against a dangerous galaxy. After the ambassador left, President Rodriguez called an emergency cabinet meeting. The stakes couldn't be higher. Earth's economy depended heavily on coalition trade agreements. Human colonies relied on coalition military protection against pirates and hostile species. Breaking with the galactic government could mean disaster for millions of humans. But then Dr. Maria Santos presented her preliminary reports on the refugee species, and everything changed. The Karathi aren't just good engineers. Maria explained to the cabinet, their quantum computing technology is centuries ahead of anything we've seen. With their help, we could develop faster than light communication that would revolutionize space travel and commerce. She pulled up medical files next. Does Alani have biotechnology that could cure diseases we thought were impossible to treat? Their understanding of genetic therapy could extend human lifespans by decades. Finally, she showed psychological studies of the HFY. Their empathic abilities aren't just for reading emotions, they can help treat trauma, depression, and mental disorders that have plagued humanity for centuries. They could teach us to understand ourselves better than we ever imagined. Dr. Kevin Taylor added his own findings. The coalition didn't exile these species because they were inferior. They exiled them because they were superior. The Karathi's technology threatened established power structures. The Zelani's peaceful nature challenged the coalition's war-focused culture. The Vexi's ability to sense corruption was exposing coalition crimes. Defense Secretary Mike Patterson looked grim. So we're not just sheltering refugees. We're rescuing the galaxy's greatest treasures from people too stupid to recognize their value. President Rodriguez made her decision that night. In a televised address to Earth and its colonies, she announced that the refugees would be granted full sanctuary and citizenship. These beings aren't criminals or genetic failures, she declared. They're survivors of persecution, holders of knowledge, and proof that diversity makes civilization stronger, not weaker. The coalition's response was swift. Trade agreements were suspended. Immediately, coalition representatives were recalled from Earth. Human merchant ships were turned away from coalition ports without explanation. The embargo had begun, but something unexpected happened as news of Earth's decision spread. More refugee ships began arriving, not just from the 3 exiled species, but from dozens of others who had been living under coalition oppression. Scientists who had been silenced, artists whose work had been banned, philosophers whose ideas challenged coalition doctrine. Dr. Maria Santos found herself coordinating the largest resettlement project in human history. Emergency cities were built in Earth's oceans for the Zelani. The Australian mining sites were converted into crystal gardens for the Karathi. Quiet retreat centers were established in remote locations for the Vexi. Meanwhile, Admiral Jake Morrison worked with refugee leaders to understand what they were really dealing with. ZC Tar, a Karathi engineer, shared technical specifications that made human scientists gasp with amazement. Lydia Bluong, a Vexi empath, helped Earth's diplomats understand the true nature of coalition politics through emotional analysis of their leaders. Most importantly, the refugees brought something Earth had never possessed: detailed knowledge of coalition weaknesses. The empire that seemed so powerful and unified was actually held together by fear, lies, and brutal suppression of dissent. As the last refugee ship settled into Earth's solar system, President Rodriguez realized they had crossed a line from which there was no return. Earth had declared independence from the coalition in all but name. War was coming, but for the first time, humanity wouldn't be fighting alone. 2 years had passed since the first refugee ships arrived at Earth. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station above Earth, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's largest spaceport. Half the workers were human, but the others came from a dozen different species that had found sanctuary in Earth's solar system. Below him, a Karathi engineer named Czar supervised the installation of quantum communication arrays. His crystalline body sparkled with different colors as he worked, each hue indicating a different thought process. Jake had learned to read some of these patterns during their friendship. Right now, Zactor was concentrating intensely, his crystal structure glowing bright blue. The new arrays will allow instant communication across the galaxy, Zetar explained when Jake approached. No more waiting months for messages to reach distant colonies. Jake smiled. Coalition is going to hate that. Their control depends on keeping star systems isolated from each other. On the other side of the station, Vex High Counselor Lydia Bluong was helping a group of human engineers deal with work stress. Her pale, gentle features were calm as she guided them through emotional exercises that helped them think more clearly. Jake could feel the peaceful atmosphere she projected even from a distance. The changes on Earth were remarkable. New cities floated in the oceans where Zelani families had built homes that looked like living coral reefs. Their biotechnology had already cured 3 diseases that had plagued human colonies for decades. The Australian Crystal Gardens had become centers of learning where human students worked alongside Karathi masters to develop incredible new technologies. Vex High Counseling Centers had reduced crime and mental illness in human cities by 40%, but the coalition's response had been brutal. Trade embargoes had cost Earth billions of credits. Human merchant ships were attacked by pirates that used coalition weapons and tactics. 3 human colonies had been cut off completely when coalition forces blockaded their supply routes. Jake's communication device chimed with an urgent message. Coalition Ambassador Tekmer was requesting another meeting with Earth's government. This would be his final ultimatum. President Nancy Rodriguez sat across from Ambassador Themer in the same room where they had met 2 years earlier. The insecta diplomat looked even more threatening than before, his forearms moving in agitated patterns while his compound eyes fixed on her with obvious hostility. President Rodriguez Tekmer clicked. The Coalition Council has reached the end of its patience. Earth has 6 months to expel all refugee populations and return to proper membership status. Failure to comply will result in military intervention. Define military intervention, President Rodriguez said calmly. Complete occupation of Earth and all human colonies, removal of your current government, installation of coalition administrators to ensure compliance with galactic law. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. President Rodriguez had expected this moment, but hearing it spoken aloud still sent chills through her body. And if we agree to your terms, what happens to the refugees? Tekmer's mandibles clicked with what might have been amusement. They will be transported to designated containment facilities for final processing. You mean execution? I mean permanent removal of genetic and cultural contaminants from civilized space. Impressed, Rodriguez stood up slowly. Ambassador Tekmer, please inform the Coalition Council that Earth respectfully declines their offer. The ambassador's compound eyes widened. You are choosing extinction over compliance. We're choosing freedom over slavery. President Rodriguez replied, you have your answer. After Tekmer left President Rodriguez called an emergency meeting of Earth's military leadership. Admiral Jake Morrison joined the session by video link from his command station. The mood in the room was grim but determined. "How long do we have?" President Rodriguez asked. Admiral Ben Carter consulted his intelligence reports 6 months before they move. Openly, the coalition ships are already positioning themselves around our outer colonies. They're planning to cut us off completely before the invasion begins. What are our chances in a straight military confrontation? The president asked. Carter's expression was bleak. Against the full coalition fleet, almost zero. They have thousands of ships and control most of the galaxy's military production facilities. We have maybe 200 vessels and no allies. Jake's voice came through the communication system. That's not exactly true, sir. Everyone in the room turned to look at the screen. Jake continued, "We may not have traditional allies, but we have something the coalition doesn't expect. We have the species they threw away." Over the following weeks, Jake worked closely with refugee leaders to assess their capabilities. The results were surprising. The Zelani possessed biohips that could repair themselves and adapt to any environment. These vessels weren't just transports. They were living warships that could grow new weapons and defenses as needed. The Carathi had quantum computers that could predict enemy movements and coordinate perfect battle tactics. Their crystal-based technology was immune to most coalition electronic warfare systems. The Vex high empathic network could provide battlefield awareness that no conventional military could match. They could sense enemy intentions before the enemies themselves fully understood their plans. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Kevin, a tailor, and a team of Carathi scientists developed something unprecedented: energy shields that could absorb and redirect coalition weapons fire. The technology worked by using quantum crystals to create miniature black holes that swallowed incoming energy beams and expelled them in different directions. "We can't match their numbers," Jake explained to the War Council, "but we can make their weapons useless against us." The decision was made to form the Terra Alliance. Admiral Jake Morrison announced its creation during a galaxy-wide broadcast that reached every inhabited system. Earth's quantum communication arrays built with Carathi technology made the transmission impossible for the coalition to block or intercept. "Today we declare the formation of a new galactic government," Jake said from his command bridge. "Terra Alliance welcomes any species that believes in freedom, cooperation, and the value of all intelligent life. We reject the coalition's doctrine that some beings are superior to others." The broadcast showed images of the thriving refugee settlements on Earth. Zelani children played in crystal-clear pools while their parents worked alongside human scientists. Carathi engineers taught human students to build technologies that seemed like magic. Vex high healers helped trauma victims from a dozen different species recover from coalition persecution. The coalition calls these beings inferior, Jake continued. They label them as genetic failures and cultural contaminants, but we've seen the truth. These refugees have made humanity stronger, smarter, and more compassionate. They've shared knowledge that will benefit the entire galaxy. The response was immediate and dramatic. Across coalition space, oppressed species began to rebel. Ships defected from coalition fleets to join. The growing Terra Alliance, entire star systems declared independence from the galactic government. Dr. Tony Mitchell, Earth's former coalition liaison, warned that open rebellion would bring terrible retaliation. They'll destroy entire worlds to make examples, he told Jake during a private meeting. The coalition doesn't negotiate with rebels. Jake's response became legendary throughout human space. Then we'll show them what happens when you corner Earth's children. Within months, the Terra Alliance grew from Earth's small fleet to coalition of over 30 species. More refugees arrived daily, not fleeing persecution now, but coming to join the fight for galactic freedom. Zar led Karathi engineers in upgrading Alliance ships with quantum weapons that could penetrate any known defense. Lydia Bluon coordinated Vex High empaths into a galaxy-wide intelligence network that tracked coalition movements. In real time, Zelani biohips began reproducing, creating living fleets that grew stronger with each passing day. The coalition tried to dismiss the alliance as a minor rebellion led by primitive humans and genetic outcasts. But their spy networks reported disturbing news. Alliance technology was superior to coalition equipment. Alliance coordination was perfect thanks to Vex High empathic links. Alliance ships could repair battle damage faster than coalition weapons could inflict it. Most worrying of all, the truth about coalition atrocities was spreading faster than they could suppress it. Species that had been loyal for centuries were questioning their allegiance. The empire built on fear and lies was beginning to crack. War Commander Vados of the reptilian Draconi species was given command of the coalition response. His orders were simple: crush the Terra Alliance completely and make their destruction so terrible that no one would ever dare rebel again. The storm was gathering, and both sides knew that the coming war would determine the fate of the entire galaxy. The attack came without warning. At dawn Mars time, War Commander Vras led 3 coalition battleships through the asteroid belt, targeting the peaceful Zelani settlement on Mars, where 8,000 refugees had built a new home in the planet's underground water reserves. Captain Amy Richards was conducting a routine patrol near Mars when her sensors detected the incoming coalition fleet. Her ship, the ESV Liberty, was a small escort vessel, no match for 3 battleships, but Amy didn't hesitate. She opened a communication channel to the Zelani settlement. This is Captain Richards to New Coral City. You have incoming coalition forces. Evacuate immediately. The response came from Elder Teclon, the Zelani leader on Mars. Captain Richards, we cannot move 8,000 people in minutes. Our children and elderly cannot travel quickly. Amy watched her tactical display as the coalition ships closed in. She had perhaps 10 minutes before they reached Mars orbit. Her ship carried only basic weapons, but she had something else. Direct link to Admiral Jake Morrison's command network. Admiral Morrison. Amy called on the emergency frequency. Coalition forces attacking Mars settlement. 3 battleships. I'm moving to intercept. Jake's voice crackled back immediately. Amy, pull back. You can't fight 3 battleships alone. I'm not leaving those families to die, Amy replied. She pushed her engines to maximum and angled toward the coalition fleet. War Commander Vados watched the small human ship approach on his battle screen. The reptilian commander was over 8 feet tall with scales like black armor and eyes like burning coals. He had spent 50 years crushing rebellions across the galaxy, and he knew the value of making examples. Commander, his weapons officer, reported, "A single human ship is moving to intercept us." Fractus hissed with amusement, "Let it come when we destroy it. The refugees will understand their protectors are weak." But Amy Richards had learned things during her 2 years working with refugee technologies. Her ship now carried Karathi quantum shields and Zelani biorepair systems. When the coalition battleships opened fire, their energy beams struck her shields and scattered harmlessly into space. Surprise gave her precious minutes. Amy opened fire with her upgraded weapons, plasma cannons designed by Karathi engineers who understood energy manipulation better than anyone in the galaxy. Her shots punched through coalition shields like they were made of paper. The first battleship staggered as Amy's weapons tore through its hull, but 3 ships against 1 was still impossible odds. Amy's shields began to fail under concentrated fire, and her biorepair systems couldn't keep up with the damage. Then the cavalry arrived. Admiral Jake Morrison's fleet dropped out of hyperspace just as Amy's ship was about to be destroyed. But this wasn't the same fleet the coalition remembered from 2 years ago. Jake's flagship, the HFY Terra, was a fusion of human engineering, Karathi quantum technology, and Zelani bios. It was alive in ways that no ship had ever been before. "This is Admiral Morrison to coalition forces," Jake broadcast. "You are attacking civilian refugees under Terror Alliance protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." War Commander Vat snarled at the communication. "Admiral Morrison, your pathetic rebellion ends today. We will destroy your refugees, your ships, and your home world." "Wrong answer," Jake replied. The battle that followed shocked both sides. Coalition energy weapons struck Alliance ships and simply vanished, absorbed by quantum shields that turned the energy into power for their own systems. Alliance biohips regenerated damage faster than coalition guns could inflict it. Karathi quantum computers predicted every coalition movement and positioned Alliance forces perfectly to counter them. Captain Amy Richards, her ship barely holding together, watched in amazement as War Commander Vataus's flagship was surrounded by 6 Alliance vessels that moved like they shared a single mind. The Vex high empathic network allowed perfect coordination between ships separated by thousands of kilometers. But the real shock came when the coalition tried their most powerful weapon, planet killer missiles designed to crack worlds apart. The missiles launched toward Mars, carrying enough explosive force to destroy the entire Zelani settlement. They never reached their target. Zelani biohips intercepted the missiles and did something impossible. They absorbed the explosions, converting the destructive energy into life force that made them grow larger and stronger. War Commander Vraus watched his ultimate weapons fail completely. His 3 battleships were being torn apart by Alliance forces that fought with technology he didn't understand. Worse, his own weapons were making the enemy stronger. "All ships retreat," he ordered. "Retreat immediately," but it was too late. Captain Amy Richards, her ship repaired by biotechnology during the battle, blocked the coalition escape route. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Barnes led ground forces that had teleported aboard The Coalition flagship using Karathi. Quantum transporters. Within hours, all 3 Coalition battleships were captured. War Commander Vatus found himself in chains facing Admiral Jake Morrison across a conference table on the ESV Terra. Your rebellion has cost many lives, Vatus hissed. The Coalition will send 1,000 ships to crush you. Jake studied the reports from the battle. 0 Alliance casualties. The bio-repair systems had healed every damaged ship. The quantum shields had protected every crew member. Most importantly, they had captured intact Coalition vessels with their military databases. Commander Vras, Jake said quietly, "You're thinking about this wrong. We didn't start a rebellion. You did." Before that Reptilian commander could respond, Jake activated a holographic display showing intelligence gathered during the battle. Coalition military records revealed the truth about their empire, centuries of genocide, slavery, and systematic extermination of species deemed inferior. The Zelani weren't the first peaceful species you exiled. Jake continued, the Karathi weren't the first brilliant engineers you feared. The Vexi weren't the first empaths you silenced. You've been murdering entire civilizations for 1,000 years. The records showed Coalition cleansing operations against dozens of species. Worlds sterilized from orbit. Populations herded into camps and exterminated. Children separated from parents and raised as slaves. The scale of the atrocities was beyond imagination. Dr. Elena Vasquez entered the conference room carrying a data tablet. "Admiral, we've cracked their quantum encryption. We have complete Coalition military communications for the past 50 years. Jake nodded. "Broadcast it all frequencies, all channels. Let the galaxy see what their government really is." The truth spread through Coalition space faster than their leaders could suppress it. The Vex high empathic network carried the emotional impact of the revelations to every inhabited world. Species that had been loyal to the Coalition for centuries learned that their neighbors, their friends, their family members had been secretly murdered by the government they trusted. Rebellions erupted across the galaxy. The Andromedan Federation declared independence and joined the Terra Alliance. The Century Republic expelled Coalition officials and opened their borders to refugees. Entire Coalition fleets defected, bringing their ships and crews to fight for freedom. But the Coalition wasn't finished. Emergency orders went out from the galactic capital. All available forces were to converge on Earth itself. If the Terra Alliance wanted to protect refugees, they would have to defend their home world against the largest military force ever assembled. War Commander Vrato, still in chains, but watching the tactical displays, began to laugh. It was a cold, cruel sound that made the humans in the room shiver. "You think you've won," he hissed, "but you've only made us desperate. 10,000 ships are coming for your precious Earth. We will burn your home world to ash and scatter your refugees across the void." Jake looked at the Coalition commander with something like pity. "You still don't understand. Earth isn't just our home world anymore. It's home to everyone the galaxy rejected, and we protect our family." The final battle was coming, and Jake knew it would determine whether freedom or tyranny ruled the stars. The Coalition fleet arrived at Earth like a storm of metal and death. 10,000 ships darkened the space around humanity's home world. More military power than had ever been assembled in galactic history. Coalition Supreme Commander HFY led the massive armada from his flagship, a battle station the size of a small moon. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the ESV Terra, watching the enemy fleet take positions around Earth's solar system. His own forces seemed pitiful in comparison, only 800 ships against 10,000, but Jake wasn't worried about the numbers anymore. Alliance ships, this is Admiral Morrison, he broadcast. Remember why we're here. We're not just defending Earth. We're defending the idea that every being has value, that diversity makes us stronger, and that bullies can be stopped when good people stand together. Captain Steve Palmer commanded the orbital defense platforms around Earth. Human-built weapons merged with Karathi quantum technology and Zelani bios created defenses unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The platforms could regenerate damage, adapt to new threats, and coordinate their fire with perfect accuracy. Admiral Morrison, Steve reported, Earth defenses are ready. The refugee populations have been moved to secure shelters, but they're asking to help fight. Jake smiled grimly. Tell them their job is to survive and build the future. Our job is to make sure they get the chance. The first attack came from 3 directions at once. Coalition forces tried to overwhelm Earth's defenses with sheer numbers, sending waves of ships against the orbital platforms, but the platforms didn't fight like normal weapons. They moved like living things, flowing around enemy fire and striking back with devastating precision. Biohips grew larger during the battle, absorbing energy from coalition weapons and converting it into new weapons and shields. Karathi quantum vessels appeared and disappeared across the battlefield, impossible to target or predict. Vex high-guided fighters moved in perfect formation, their pilots linked by empathic networks that made them fight like a single organism. Supreme Commander HFY watched his forces struggle against impossible technology. Coalition weapons that had conquered 1,000 worlds were useless against Alliance defenses. His ships were being destroyed faster than they could retreat. How are they doing this? He demanded from his command staff. Their technology is completely unknown, his science officer reported. Our energy weapons seem to make their ships stronger. Our quantum disruptors have no effect on their shields. Our tactical computers can't predict their movements. Cathar's mandibles clicked with frustration. The coalition had ruled the galaxy for centuries because their technology was superior to everyone else's, but these refugees had somehow developed science that made coalition advances look primitive. Meanwhile, Admiral Lisa Wang led the Terra Alliance Second Fleet in a flanking attack that cut off coalition reinforcements. Her ships moved through hyperspace using Karathi navigation systems that could calculate jumps impossible for coalition vessels. She appeared behind enemy lines and destroyed supply ships before the coalition could react. The turning point came when Dr. Ferelina Vasquez activated her secret weapon, working with Vexi empaths and Karathi quantum specialists. She had developed a way to broadcast truth directly into people's minds, not thoughts or opinions, but pure factual information that couldn't be denied or misunderstood. Across the coalition fleet, soldiers and officers suddenly knew the real history of their empire. They felt the emotions of every Species that had been exterminated, they experienced the fear and pain of refugees fleeing persecution. They understood that everything they had believed about coalition superiority was a lie. Ship after ship stopped fighting and surrendered. Entire squadrons defected to join the alliance forces. Coalition admirals found themselves commanding fleets that refused to follow orders. Supreme Commander Cathvar watched his armada collapse as the truth spread through his forces. Thousands of ships that had come to destroy Earth were now protecting it. His communications were filled with messages from captains declaring their allegiance to the Terror Alliance. All remaining coalition forces came a broadcast from Admiral Jake Morrison. You have 60 seconds to surrender or withdraw. We don't want to destroy you. We want you to join us in building something better. Cathvar's flagship was one of the last coalition vessels still fighting. His bridge crew had been replaced with loyal guards who couldn't be affected by Vex high broadcasts, but even his most faithful soldiers were beginning to question their orders. Supreme Commander, his weapons officer said hesitantly, perhaps we should consider retreat. Never, Cathvar snarled. I would rather die than surrender to inferior beings, but the choice was taken away from him. War Commander Vraus, freed from Alliance custody during a prisoner exchange, led a group of coalition defectors in a boarding action against Cathvar's flagship. The reptilian commander had spent weeks in Alliance custody, talking with refugees and learning the truth about coalition crimes. Cathvar, Fractus said as he entered the bridge with his soldiers. The war is over. The coalition is finished. The Supreme Commander stared at his former subordinate in shock. You betrayed your own species for these aliens. I chose truth over lies, Fractus replied. The coalition doesn't represent our species. It represents fear, hatred, and the belief that might makes right. These refugees have shown us a better way. The Battle of Earth ended not with destruction, but with transformation. Coalition forces that had come to destroy the Terror Alliance instead joined it. Ships designed for conquest became vessels of exploration and aid. Weapons meant to kill became tools for building and healing. 5 years later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the same observation deck where he had watched refugee ships arrive, but now the view was completely different. Earth's orbital space was filled with ships from hundreds of species, all working together to build the new Galactic Republic. The former coalition capital had been abandoned, its government dissolved. In its place, the Republic established a council where every species had an equal voice. Former coalition worlds voted to join the new government, tired of centuries of oppression and war. Dr. Maria Santos had become the Republic's Minister of Refugee Affairs, overseeing the resettlement of over 2 million beings displaced by coalition persecution. Her programs had saved 53 species from extinction and helped them find new homes throughout the galaxy. President Nancy Rodriguez, now serving her second term as the Republic's elected leader, prepared to address the Galactic Council from the steps of New Geneva, the Republic's capital city. Representatives from 300 species had gathered to discuss trade, exploration, and the peaceful expansion of civilization. 5 years ago, President Rodriguez said to the assembled delegates, the galaxy was ruled by fear. Species were ranked by Their military power, different was. Dangerous, weakness was punished by extinction. She gestured toward the mixed crowds in the city below, human. Children played alongside young Zelani. Karathi and Vexai, former coalition. Soldiers worked as teachers and engineers. Scientists from dozens of worlds shared knowledge freely. Today, we prove that a civilization's strength isn't measured by who it conquers, but by who it saves. The coalition rejected these beings as inferior, but Earth gave them refuge, and together we built something the universe had never seen. Society where every voice matters and no one is left behind. The final scene showed the daily arrival of new ships at Earth orbital stations, but these weren't refugees fleeing persecution anymore. They were citizens coming home to a galaxy that finally had room for everyone. In the parks of New Geneva, species that had been enemies for centuries sat together planning joint missions to explore new worlds. Karathi taught quantum physics to human students. Zelani bioengineers worked with coalition defectors to heal damaged worlds. Vexi counselors helped former soldiers deal with the trauma of their past actions. War Commander Vruz, now serving as the Republic's Minister of Reconciliation, watched former coalition officers learning to work with the species they had once oppressed. The process was slow and sometimes painful, but it was working. Admir Morrison, VTO House, said as Jake joined him at the viewing window, "Do you ever regret your decision to help the refugees?" Jake looked out at the thriving civilization they had built together. "How can I regret the best choice humanity ever made?" The galaxy that had once seemed so cold and hostile had become home to something unprecedented, a true alliance built on cooperation instead of conquest, diversity instead of conformity, and hope instead of fear.